Joining me in studio today, we've got James Arnold, president of American Bank of Commerce. You can log on to theabcbank.com, get a lot of information on ABC Bank, different locations, and consumer loans. James, welcome back to the studio. How are you?
Thanks, Chad. Good to see you. I hope Vegas treated you well.
It did. We actually, for spending a week in Las Vegas, and we came home and we were actually up when we came home. So that was a good thing.
Well, my dad always told me Vegas wasn't built on winners, and so I'm glad you were one of the few and proud. So
that's right. Good. It was a good trip to Las Vegas, which means that you just want to go back sooner. If you lose money in Las Vegas, you're like, we can wait a little bit before we go. You win, you come back and go, we need to plan another trip.
This is easy. I can do this again.
Oh, absolutely. That's how they get you. The economy in Lubbock, there have been quite a few stories and a few different things that I want to get into because lately there have been some pretty good stories about the economy here in Lubbock. Things are looking good.
And they have for a long time, or at least for the last, 36 months, it seems like. So the Lubbock economy continues to be on solid footing. And, like I said before, 72% or 75% of a local economy is made up of housing and retail sales. And so that's why a lot of people focus on those two attributes. And so the housing market in Lubbock just continues to perform, and local banks, local builders work together, and it just creates a solid foundation for Lubbock. And then you've got Texas Tech continuing to grow. We're about to see Tech probably announce record enrollment for the fall when the kids show back up. And that's nothing but good news for Lubbock.
Residential construction in June at its highest level since 2006. What do you attribute that to, and what does that do when you see highest levels since 2006? What does that do to the economy? What kind of growth does that show even going forward?
Well, it shows it's a good indicator of the economy, Chad. And what I look at beyond that, peel the onion back one more layer, are values holding. So are we having to lower prices to move product? And the answer to that's no. Home values are growing. Housing starts are growing. Home sales are growing. So it's not like we're having to do something over here to manipulate the numbers to make them look better. All across the board in retail and housing, it's a positive news.
Well, and you just don't, and this correlates with the good economy, I would assume. You don't see homes that are staying on the market for a long time. Now, if they're over, $500,000, okay, they're going to stay there for a while. But you look at the average price of a home and how long it stays on the market. There are people who sell their homes within a week.
Yeah, there's some markets that are pretty hot right now. Melanie Park and Tech Terrace are probably the two hottest. But if you look around the city, when you get above $750,000, you may sit on the market 60, 90 days. That's normal. But if you price your home right, you should sell it within 30 days. I mean, that's just kind of an industry standard. We've got great realtors here in town that know the market and know how to price things to sell that create value for both the buyer and the seller. But, when you had a sustained low interest rate environment like we've had for the last 60 months or 72 months, that allows people to maybe buy homes that, they may not could have afforded 3 or 4 years ago based on their income. But when rates are below 3 and 4%, that creates an opportunity for people to buy something that they may not have been able to afford at an interest rate environment of about 5 or 6.
How does the market for Lubbock compare to other parts of the state? Is that something that you take a look at?
Yeah, it depends on what you compare it to, Chad. If you look at Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, our growth is good, but not anywhere near what those guys are experiencing in terms of price increase and velocity of home sales. Austin was down in July for home sales for the first time in probably 36, 48 months. So you're seeing some capping of some growth in these markets. Lubbock is the tortoise and the hare story. We're slow and steady wins the race. We'll grow 3 and 4, maybe 5%. Well, Austin will grow 9, 11, 12% in a year. And that can outstrip some people's capacity to pay some stuff back. And so you like to see modest and steady growth rather than this up and down mercurial kind of stuff you see in Austin.
Yeah, I was about to ask you, what would you rather see, the way home sales and home prices are going here, where yes, they're increasing, but it's not what you see in Austin, where it's just a huge jump because people get phased out. People can't afford homes at that point.
What you're seeing in Austin are people that have been in their homes for a long time. They can't afford the property taxes. The property taxes have increased in some cases on commercial property, 150, 200% in the last 2 years. Well, that's not sustainable. And so lenders and borrowers, they like predictability. I want to know what it's going to be in 3 and 4 and 5 years. And when you have swings of double-digit growth, it's hard to predict the future.
We're visiting with James Arnold, president of American Bank of Commerce. Talked about the housing industry, obviously very strong here in Lubbock. What about auto industry?
Yeah, auto industry is kind of cyclical. You can almost predict it that the summer months, they always kind of slide a little bit. You'll have a little bit of back-to-school buying, but for pre-owned automobiles, used car lots, they have a note season, and that is probably starting mid-January through May. People filing their tax returns, getting refunds, and they take that refund and go make a down payment on a car. Mm-hmm. And it's very predictable. You see it. You'll see inventories for car dealers rise in January because they want to get ready for that buying season. And that'll last for the first half of the year. And then it tapers off through the end of the year. You'll have that little spike for back to school, but it tapers back off for December. So that's what we're seeing in this market and in most markets in Texas.
What about for retail growth? And we see all these retail stores that are popping up, over off of the West Loop. You see a lot of retail, obviously, there popping, but you see it all across the city.
Through the second quarter, we were flat, down just a little bit from this time last year. And so it's hard to predict retail sales, but the things that give us comfort are Lubbock continues to grow. Our retail sales is a function of a larger MSA, and our retail MSA extends all the way into eastern New Mexico, up north towards Amarillo, down south, Midland, Odessa, and to the east. And so it's a pretty big net that we can cast for retail providers in this town. We'll see that number come back up, but it's down a little bit, and it's hard to explain why. But when you look at unemployment, we're down. We're below 4% again in unemployment. So we're fully employed. It's just one of those things that just bears watching.
Can you hang around one more segment?
You bet.
All right. When we come back, we're going to get into the impact college students will have when they return, when you have the thousands of college kids descend upon Lubbock. And also, there was a story out that website ranking Lubbock one of the best cities for young people in their 20s. So that's a good thing. We'll talk about the economic impact of that and what the future holds as well. Chad Hasty Show, News Talk 790 KFYO. Thank you very much for tuning in. In studio, James Arnold, president of American Bank of Commerce. You can log on to ABC Bank's website, theabcbank.com. James, we've got college students that are going to be coming back to Tech probably within the next week or so. You already have some students, I think, moving in over at LCU. So obviously we're going to have a major influx of people coming into Lubbock. That's got to mean really good things for the economy. But in terms of numbers, what have we seen in the past, and what can we kind of anticipate as far as the economy goes moving forward with college students coming back?
Well, I think, if you live in Lubbock, you feel the impact. You can tell the difference in traffic. Movie theaters are less crowded. Restaurants are less crowded. So it's kind of nice to have a break in the summer from that. But when you look at it from an economic perspective, for every $1,000 or for every 1,000 new students, 75 jobs are created for every 1,000 students. And so that doesn't take long to have a big impact on our local economy. And I think a lot of that is driving what we were just talking about in terms of housing. So you've got a big impact with students, and Tech's on a growth trajectory, and they continue to add students. They'll add probably another 1,000 students this year, net over what they had last fall. And so it's a big impact on retail sales, on housing, and it's a job creator for Lubbock, which is good.
And it seems as though the college students now are bringing more money with them than they did years ago, where, they have more of that disposable income, and, maybe it's from them finding more jobs around Texas Tech because you have the growth of retail and everything around Tech, but also just coming in from, the Dallas, Houston, Austin areas and bringing that money here to Lubbock.
I think if you looked at it, I've not, but if you went back and looked 20 years ago what the mix of students was at Texas Tech, it was probably lower for Dallas, Houston, Austin, San Antonio than it is today. Lubbock, Texas Tech brings in a very diverse, high-caliber student into this university and into this town, and they do bring more disposable income. And you see that at Alamo Draft House. You see that at restaurants, higher-end restaurants that when I was a 22-year-old college student, I couldn't afford to eat there. So it's good for Lubbock, and it brings an excitement to the town. And You're going to talk about it in a minute, but just Lubbock's a great place for somebody coming out of college to, if you can find a good job, it's a great place to live.
Yeah, well, and there was that story. A website ranked Lubbock the sixth best for 20-somethings, according to the website move.org, and it ranked cost of living, unemployment rate, commute times, which, okay, when I hear people complain about traffic in Lubbock, I'm from the Dallas area originally, that's a commute. That's traffic. It's not that bad here at all. But you have commute times that are all part of that. And when you add all of that in, and then you look at the different businesses that are coming here, I think for those 20-somethings, for those younger 30s, and when they're the young professionals, when they're looking at Lubbock, Texas now, there is a lot of stuff to do here.
Well, we're a Big 12 city, and so never underestimate the power of Texas Tech for those kind of things. And so you can live in a town like Lubbock where the airport's easy to get in and out of. The weather, by and large, is pretty good. And the commute is non-existent. Now, if you choose to live 20 miles south of town, you're going to have a commute. But at the end of the day, probably 60 to 70% of the jobs in Lubbock are at 19th and Memphis. Broad circle. You got Texas Tech, you got the Health Science Center, you got Covenant, you got UMC. That's where most people drive in to work. Most people in Lubbock. So it's a great place to live, and it's low cost of living. The tax structure is good. We're a pro-business environment. We've got leadership on the city council now, and maybe even at the county level, that's pro-business and pro-Lubbock, which is a lot of towns such as Austin, College Station, Dallas, they can't say those things.
Yeah. Tourism. When you look ahead to Texas Tech football season, I know it's something that all businesses here in this town, they love it when football season is back because you're going to bring in a lot of people and they all have to eat.
Well, and they spend the night. I think a lot of our games this year are night games. Well, that's great for the hotel industry because you could still – At a late game, if you wanted to stretch it, you could get back to Midland, you could get back to Amarillo, but you're probably not going to drive all the way back to Dallas and for sure not to Austin. So for our hoteliers in town, it's great. And for our retailers, it's great because now you can spend the day shopping, doing some stuff, spending some money, eating lunch. Maybe you tailgate late in the afternoon and you go to the game at night. So night games are better for our economy than day games. I wish we had the Baylor game. I hate giving up a home game because I know the impact that game would have on our local economy. I understand why we do it, but it's not a pro-Lubbock decision.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that 100%. When we look at the hotels, and this is something I hear from a lot of folks, they're surprised at how many hotels are popping up across the city. I think there are still a few right now that are being planned, and there's one that's going to be built, I know, out by the Cabela's development. They're going to put in a hotel over there. There's one going up right on Restaurant Row, right off the loop, and there are other hotels that are coming in. So are we getting to the point with hotels where we still need an influx of hotels to go up?
At some point you're going to reach that equilibrium. I don't know when that is, but as of last count, there are 11 hotel projects either in the design phase, in the permitting phase, or in the construction phase. And so unprecedented for Lubbock. I keep waiting on that point to reach and say, okay, that's enough. We're good on hotel space. But they build them and they fill them up. And I had a friend of mine that we bank that has a number of hotels in Lubbock, and he kind of jokingly says, if I could get rid of Sunday night, my occupancy would be above 90 every day of the week.
See, and that shocks a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of hotels that are pretty full during the middle of the week, and it's from conventions that maybe in the media we don't hear about and different things that are going on. But this is a tourist destination, and this is a destination for conventions and for business people.
Well, I think during the week you're going to see a lot of people in hotels dealing with medical industry, Texas Tech, some of the school business kind of stuff. I mean, it's all revolves around the major employers. On the weekends, you've got soccer tournaments, softball tournaments, volleyball tournaments. I mean, youth sports in America is at a different level than it was 10 years ago, much less 20 years ago. So that's what's filling hotel rooms up on the weekends. And, of course, now, this weekend, it's moms and dads coming to town, moving their kids into Texas Tech and LCU and Wayland. Mm-hmm. Well, next weekend it'll be something else. And then the next weekend it's football season. So it's an interesting business to be in if you're in the hotel business, because I'd have never thought Lubbock could absorb the number of hotels we've absorbed in the last 5 years, much less the 11 that are on the board right now.
With the people that you talk to, and I don't want to get too much into the political realm of minor league baseball, but as you know, it was a big topic. The Hotel Motel, I guess, Association, they came out and said, well, right now we're not embracing the idea of raising the hotel motel tax. Now, this is money that when someone stays at the hotel that they pay. Would that have an impact on people when they come to Lubbock? I mean, it's not like you're going to go and find a bunch of hotels in Post or Slayton or anywhere else. So why would the hotels maybe be against raising the hotel motel tax? And what kind of impact, just off the top of your head, would a minor league baseball team maybe have on Lubbock?
I think it would have a positive impact. Now, how much would it contribute to heads in beds and motels and tourism? It's hard to say. We do know what the impact of Texas Tech has. And, the baseball season tickets for Texas Tech baseball has a waiting list of 400 people today.
It's amazing.
For tickets next year. So baseball's a big deal in Lubbock, and you could trace it back to Bobby Magel and the Monterey Plainsman days, the Little League World Series kids. I mean, it's a big deal in Lubbock. So I think it would do well. I think if we had a different debt structure at the city level, we may have a different attitude at City Hall about bringing in a baseball facility or a team. But given our $1 billion debt load and our uncertainty about LP&L, I don't know that city leaders want to add on another big deal like that to our stack of problems or opportunities, however you want to look at it. But would it do well in Lubbock? I think it would. I think Lubbock's big enough. Our reach is big enough. We talked about that extended MSA. It's big enough that would draw people in for a minor league baseball team. I've seen it happen in Midland for 50 years, and it's done well in that community. So I think it'd do well here.
Is it something that would, with raising that tax on the hotels and those who are coming in, would that have any kind of negative impact, you think, on those who are traveling to Lubbock?
Well, I think the hotel industry knows better than we do on that. They know what their customers will tolerate and what they won't tolerate. I think it would probably have less of an impact than they think, but they're always nervous about having, raising something in terms of revenue, whether it goes to them or the city, that they don't have control over. And so I think that's what they're hesitant about, is losing control over what their room rate can be and having the city dictate that because they're having to raise the hotel motel tax.
Sure. James Arnold, president of American Bank of Commerce. As always, we appreciate your time, and we'll visit again shortly.
Thank you, Chad.